we should be in action. So, welcome everyone to the virtual care training. We've just done some quick intros in the background there, but just for clarity, making sure everyone's in the right room and knows who we are. This is the organisation administrator and user trainer for virtual care. So this is delivered in a train the trainer style. For the audience, we will be running through both bits. Holly will run through the organisation administrator section, and Patrick will run through the user training. We'll refer to some PowerPoint slides throughout, and the PowerPoint slides also link to the documentation provided, such as the user guide, etc. So you got reference page numbers and the like to be able to follow through and look up a bit more detail on any of the aspects that we're talking about. There's a quick overview of the contents of the session today. There are indeed some subheaders with more detailed contents that might be, for example, setting up a ward or setting up a profile included as well. Just a quick bit about Healthcall, for those that aren't familiar. We are an NHS-owned organisation. NUS they are one of our shareholders, so you do indeed own part of our organisation. We are really invested in making sure that these products work for you. There are a number of ways that you can sort of inform and drive our products, both through the use and through feedback through the service desk and regular meetings that we'll have once we're in live, through regional forums like the virtual wards forums and ICB level meetings that happen that help inform our product and our roadmap and what we know about virtual wards. And indeed, as part of the project, we've already introduced our live service support team, who will be taking over from me once the product's implemented. So you should be fully supported and able to feedback and drive forward with the product really clearly once it's implemented. What is virtual care? Just quickly, the solution is designed to be an intuitive tool that helps patients take readings in their own home or another community setting, which is designed to reduce the burden on hospital beds. The platform provides clinicians with the ability to schedule vitals and questions and display this in real time. The aim of that's to enable the clinical teams to assess whether a patient requires further intervention or not, which we hope creates some efficiency by focusing the clinical attention where it's required. All the data collected is summarised in discharge PDFs and in the audit report and discharge functions. So you have full visibility and availability of that data when you need it. We're obviously going to walk you through all of those aspects in a bit more of a gentle pace shortly, but that's just a quick overview of why we're here. The training today I've already covered. We're going to cover org admin and user. There's PowerPoint deck and the training materials provided, which hopefully you've already got the user guide, but we've provided the most up-to-date version with page numbers referenced to make sure this all joins up nicely for you when you're passing it on to your teams. Any questions at that point before I hand over to my colleague Holly Williams? Oh, no, but we've got somebody new coming in, so let's... Hi there, Sarah.
Hi, sorry, it just got a bit busy clinically here, sorry.
Not at all. You've just missed me doing the really boring part at the start. Oh. We are recording today, just so that you got this to reference. Sure. But I've just done the intros and we're just about to hand over to my colleague Holly, who's going to share her screen and run through the sort of key functionality of the organisation administration. Patrick will later go on to the sort of user day-to-day use of the solution. So you'll get a good look at how to set it up and then a better look at how it's used on a day-to-day basis very soon.
Lovely, thank you.
That's okay. Over to you, Holly.
Okay, great. The first thing I wanted to cover today was our RBAC model. So that's role-based access controls. This is a model that supports the principle of least privilege, which just basically means that a user should have the least number of privileges in the solution necessary to carry out their job functions. So I'll walk you through in a little bit the user setup, but effectively there are two users that can be created within virtual care. There's an organisation admin, so they can they're responsible for setting up and managing your organisation. They can set up users, they can set up the forms, profiles and wards within the solution. We'll go into those in a little bit more detail later on. They also have the highest privilege within the organisation, so they've got access to data for all the patients that are currently in the solution. As I go through and talk about profiles and wards, some of that information the organisation admin might need access to as they're setting up, but actually they might need to liaise with the users a little bit to get that information collected. But as I say, I'll go through that in a little bit more detail later on. So next we have the user. So a user will be responsible for monitoring patients on virtual care and day-to-day. So they'll be responsible for onboarding patients, carrying out virtual appointments, as I say, monitoring the patients day-to-day. You can also associate certain wards to a user so that they're only accessing the patient data for patients that are in the wards they're assigned to. So for example, that might be a respiratory ward. That just means that a user who's assigned to a respiratory ward might not necessarily see patients who are admitted to a frailty ward, for example. And finally, we've got a patient. So Patrick will run through in a little bit what the patient can see within the patient app, but the patient has the ability to submit vitals and form responses. They can attend appointments and access ward-specific help within the app. And they've also in the app got access to all of their latest vital submissions. So all of this is covered in a little bit more detail in the RBAC document that forms part of your onboarding pack, which I believe Mark shared with you already. But again, any of the documents that are referenced in this can be shared with you after the session. So as I say, I'm going to be covering this first section, which is organisation admin. So I'm going to be talking you through creating users, creating forms, profiles, wards, and report management as well. And then I'm going to hand over to Patrick. He's going to be logged in as a user, so you'll see his view is slightly different to mine, and he can walk you through sort of the day-to-day management of it. So. So as I say, first we're going to be looking at users. I'm going to run through creating a user, managing a user, so editing their details, and then revoking a user's access. All the page numbers for the user guide are referenced in the slides. Okay, so hopefully you can now see our back office patient monitoring page. Great. So anyone who has access to the virtual care back office will see these first three tabs here. So you've got monitoring, patients, and appointments. So whether you're an organisation admin or a user, you'll see those three. The additional tab that appears for an organisation admin is this button settings here. So as you can see, there are 5 sort of sub areas within settings. There's profiles, wards, users, forms, and reports, which, as I've just mentioned, those are the 5 areas that I'm going to cover today. So first, we're going to look at users. So as you can see here, clicking down into users, you'll see a user list. So for anyone who's already created in the system. I'm going to create a user here just by clicking on this button. And you're asked to complete the user's name, email address, occupation, and phone number. So I'm just going to put some demo data in here. And you can see this validation carried out on the email address. And on the phone number as well. So here you can see we've got the 2 roles that we've just mentioned as part of the RBAC. So we've got an admin who can carry out all of the management of the organisation, and we've got the user. I'm going to create an admin today. And you can see at the bottom, we've got this clinician toggle as well. So all the clinician toggle means is it means that the user that you're creating will need to be able to attend virtual appointments. So if you click this button, a user will be able to have an appointment associated with them, and they'll be able to call the patient and have that video conference with them. If this toggle isn't selected, the user won't be able to carry out that function. So it's just really important that you get that marked on the user if that's what they're going to need. But if I create that user now, What you can do at any point is go in and manage that user and change any of the details that you need to. So I'm going to search for that user that I've just created. You can see I was showing a list of 10 users there. We have got filtering down here, so you can choose to show more users on the page. And you've also got a search function if you want to look for someone in particular. So I'm going to go here and manage the user. And as you can see here, I've just got a summary of all the data that I've just inputted when I created the user. So if I click edit, I can go in and change any of the information that I've put in, name, contact number, that sort of thing. I can also change whether or not the user needs to be able to have virtual appointments by clicking this button. And you'll see there's one additional toggle called blocked. This just provides the ability to revoke a user's access. So for an example, if one of the users of the virtual care solution has left the trust, and then you want to make sure they no longer have access to the patient data, you can raise a service desk ticket with us to have the user removed. But if you're just looking for a quick way to make sure that they can't access the solution, you can go and mark them as blocked, which I'll just go and do now. And that user will no longer be able to access the solution. So if I go back into the user list here, you can see actually we've got a little filter applied here, and it'll default to active users, but actually you can go down and click on blocked and you can see users that have previously had their access revoked. So I'm just going to go back into the user that I've just created and see what else is in there. So also within a user, you've got the ability to assign wards to a user. I'm going to show you how to create a ward in a little bit, but this is just, as I mentioned previously, if you create a user, you can assign certain wards to them, so they're only seeing their patient relevant data and patient data that's relevant to job functions that they're going to be carrying out. And we've also got a bit of an audit log at the bottom here, so you can see what that user's been doing as they've been logged into the solution. Okay, so that was the users section of the training. The next thing I'm going to be looking at is forms. So forms are a set of questions that can be sent to a patient on a scheduled basis. So they'll be set up and they'll be sent to a patient, and the patient will receive a notification to submit them within their patient app. So I'm going to show you is how to create that form. So just to call out, as part of the onboarding process, you'll be asked if you would like any forms questions adding into the solution. As you see, if I go into forms, I've got the ability to create a form. I'm just going to give it a title. And I can just go into add questions. As I just mentioned, the questions are already set up for you within the solution. So any questions that you want to be included, these can be set up during onboarding and they'll appear in this list for you. So you can just go through and select the questions that you want to appear in the form that you want to send to a patient. I'll just select a couple here. And what you can do as well, you can preview the form. So if I go into preview, you'll just see the questions in the format that the patient will see them in there. You can go through and just have a play, see what it's going to look like. Once you're happy with the form, you're happy with the name and the questions that are involved, you can save it. And at this point, you're in the form itself. You're able to see the details of the form. You're able to edit them if you need to. And you've also got this section called versions. So this form's only just been created, so you can just see it's been created at 10:49 today. But actually, if I went in and edited that form, you'd be able to see a version history of all the changes that have been made to it as well. So once the form's been created, you can determine which patients are going to receive that form and how often it's going to be sent to them within a profile. So the profiles are actually the next section I'm going to be showing you. So as previously mentioned, Patrick's going to be walking you through in a little bit where the user, where users will manage the patient's care, but the profiles and wards will need to be set up before you start onboarding patients. So within a profile, there's a couple of areas I'm going to cover. So that's manual submissions. So that determines which vitals and forms are going to be requested from patients and the schedule for those submissions. We're going to cover non-responders, we're going to cover threshold configuration. So that defines when a vital reading will raise an alert with the clinicians and the severity of that alert as well. I've added in a couple of extra page numbers in here. So we've got an example profile in the user guide. It just runs you through the creation of a profile from start to finish. And we'll talk a little bit about editing profiles as well. Okay, so again, we're just going to go back up into the settings tab at the top and into profiles. And once again, I'm going to start by creating a new profile. So once again, I'm going to name this profile something relevant. You've got the optional ability to add a description. And you've got these 3 toggles here. So the first toggle, it says to include real-time monitoring. You can ignore this for now. Healthcall are currently working on a proof of concept, which is going to hopefully allow us to integrate with some wearables. But this is future functionality, so you can ignore this for now. The next one down is manual submission. A manual submission must be selected, even if the intention is for clinicians to submit vitals on behalf of a patient. But as I previously mentioned, manual submission is what determines which vitals and forms are sent to patients to submit and when they're asked to submit them. That'll make a little bit more sense as I show you how to set that up. And finally, we've got threshold configuration, which again, that's just the severity of the alerts that will be generated for each of the vitals. So if I click through, I'm going to create a manual submission. And as you can see, as part of the profile, I can choose to ask a patient for certain vitals. I'm provided with a list of all the vitals that you're able to ask for from a patient. I'm going to select blood pressure and heart rate. You can select as many or as few as you like. And you've also got the ability to include a form in this as well. So I'm going to include the form that I've just created. And at this point, you can choose when you'd like the patient to submit. So you might have a patient that requires a lot of care. You might need them to submit every day on the hour. You might actually just want them to submit once a week at, say, 9 o'clock. So what we've got here is a timeline. So these little boxes are the times at which you might request the patient to submit their vitals and/or form responses. So similar to the vitals, you can select as many as you need to. We've got boxes that are on the hour and at past as well. We're just going to select one for today. If you click into each of these, you'll just see a summary of the notifications that a patient will receive. So a patient will receive a notification to submit their vitals at the time that's been scheduled above. So for example, 9 o'clock. If they haven't submitted within 20 minutes, they'll receive another reminder at 9:20. And again, at 20 to 10, if they still haven't submitted their readings. And then we've got this additional section here called non-responders. So this can be configured on a profile basis. So what this means is that if a patient doesn't respond within a certain amount of time, that their clinician will actually receive an alert. When I move on to wards in a second, you'll see that there's an email address associated with a ward. So if a patient doesn't submit their readings within a certain time frame, actually the ward email address will receive an alert just saying this patient hasn't submitted their vitals. So I'm going to say 4 hours here. So if a patient hasn't submitted by 1 p.m. on Tuesday, as a ward, I'll receive that notification. So you can see here a summary of what you've asked for as part of your manual submission. If I continue, I can now move to threshold configuration. So just to mention, the thresholds that are set for the vitals, they are set as a default to organisation level. Those thresholds can be provided during onboarding, and we can set those up for you. But they can also be customised on 2 further levels. So there is the profile level, which I'm showing you at the minute. And then we can cover in a little bit, and these can also be customised on a patient level as well. So if I just expand systolic blood pressure here, you can see the current values that we've got here. There are the organisation level thresholds that have been set. So you can see for each of the vitals, we've got 3 severity levels for upper and lower limits, with 3 being the highest level of severity. So I happen to be I know that patients who are going to be on this profile are going to have high blood pressure. So actually I might want to raise the alerting a little bit so that the patients aren't constantly triggering alerts when we're actually not too concerned about them. So I'm just going to change these values here. I think I need to change all of them. And again, I could do the same for lower limits. So the patients on this profile might have consistently lower heart rates, for example. Okay, so I'll press continue. And as you're about to create the profile, again, you once again faced with a summary of all of the information that you've just put in to create this profile. So you've got the manual submission, the time that you're going to ask for these from the patient, and the thresholds that you've configured as well. Okay, so this is that profile created. Yeah, so once the profile's created, similar to users and forms, you've got the ability to edit the details at any point. You can do this by opening the profile list, which again, you can access from settings. And again, you've got the same filtering ability. You can sort, so you can see 10 per page, 50 or 100. And you've got this search functionality as well. So yes, you've got the ability to edit any of the information that you've just put in. You can edit the manual submission that you've just created, and actually you can add more than one manual submission. So it might be that you want the patient to submit all of their vitals on a Tuesday, and actually you want them to submit only blood pressure and heart rate on a Thursday. So here you can add in as many manual submissions as you want to that profile, just by clicking create manual submission here. And as well, you've got this section here called thresholds, where you can see all of the thresholds that are set up for this profile. So also from within the profile, you've got the ability to archive a profile. So you can see here the status is currently set to active. If I go down here and set it to archived and press save, you might just want to archive a profile if you know that it's no longer needed. It doesn't need to be in use anymore. So if I go back to the profile list, you can see that we've got the filtering in here as well. So you can see here, these are a list of profiles that have been archived. And here's a list of all the profiles that you know to be active. Just to call out as well, if there are any active patients who are currently using that profile, the profile cannot be archived until all patients have been removed. Okay, so that is the profiles section of the training. The next section we're going to be looking at is setting up wards. So a ward within virtual care is just a cohort of patients and can be mapped to the wards within your APR. So I know we've got a lot of respiratory in today, so you might want to set up a ward just for respiratory patients. And as you start to expand, you might introduce new wards for frailty, for heart failure, that sort of thing. And again, we've got the references to the page numbers in the user guide. I'm going to walk you through the creation of a ward, managing existing wards, assigning profiles and users to wards. And we also have this patient support page customization. So this is just some support that patients can access from within the app that's relating to the ward, just so they can get the support they need. We'll cover that in just a second. Okay, so once again, under settings, you've got a tab called wards. You'll see the flow of the page is really similar and consistent throughout, so it's nice and easy to follow. We're going to create a ward. And here you can choose to assign a profile to it. So we've obviously created a profile already. You can have multiple profiles assigned to a ward, and you can also have a profile that's assigned to multiple wards. So it's just maybe worth mapping that out between the users of the service so you know exactly where you need the thresholds to be and which patients you need to be submitting which vitals when. So here I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to select one of these profiles. But again, this is optional, so if you just want to create the ward straight away, the profiles can be added to the ward at a later date. I'm just going to search for that ward it was created. I'm going to manage. So you edit the ward in exactly the same way that you would edit a profile or a user or a form. You can see the immediate detail that you just created here. And what we do recommend you doing is adding a default ward email address. This should be a generic email address that can be accessed by anyone on the ward. And this is where the alerts will be sent to for a patient if they either don't submit their readings within the time decided by the non-responders, or if they breach any of the thresholds, so any of those severity 1, 2, or 3 alerts that we've just determined in the profile. Here you can see profiles that are assigned to the ward. You can create a profile from within a ward as well. If you do create a profile in this way, the profile will automatically be assigned to that ward, but you'll also be able to access it from the profile section within settings. And this is a brand new ward, so you won't see any patients on here for the time being. But once you've started onboarding patients to the ward, you'll be able to see a list of them here as well. If I go back to details, you'll see a section here, patient support page customization. It's blank for now, but if I click into edit, so this is the text that a patient will see if they're having a bit of trouble submitting their readings. So the patient will have a patient app, and in the app there'll be a button that says need help. So if they click on that need help button, the information that will pull through is the information from this box here. So it'll be ward specific. So patients might press this button if they're having trouble submitting vitals, and maybe they're having some trouble with their medical device, or maybe if they're just a bit concerned about their own healthcare. So we do recommend that you put in a contact telephone number here, so the patient's got someone to contact if they do need some support. It might also be worth adding a little bit of support in here around using the medical devices or anything that you think might be relevant to the patient. But you've also got the ability to format that information. You can add headers, you can make the text bold in italics, but add bullet points, and you can format in whatever way you think is necessary. So once the ward's been created, you can assign users to the ward. You do that by going back into the user section and assigning the wards from there. So if I just show you an example. If I go into manage user, I can press this assign ward button in ward access. You can see that for this user, I've already got 3 wards assigned. And I can just search for the ward. And that ward will appear in the list of wards I'm assigned to. And the last thing I wanted to show you for wards was just in the same way as for profiles. You've got the ability to archive a ward if it's no longer needed. So again, you would just go into edit and you would change that status to archived. Again, if there are any active patients who are currently on that ward, you will not be able to archive it, and you'll be faced with a prompt telling you as such. So any patients will need to be removed from the ward before it can be archived. So that concludes the setting up of wards section. The last section I wanted to talk to you about today was the audit reporting functionality within the virtual care solution. So just worth calling out that our data retention policy, the information on the data retention policy can be found in our onboarding guidance document. Again, that's part of the onboarding pack that you should have received, but we can share this information with you afterwards as well. But to give you a brief summary, once a patient has been discharged from virtual care, their data is stored in our system for 90 days. If the patient is readmitted to a ward within that time will reset. But if the patient has been discharged for more than 90 days, all data will be wiped from our system. So what we do have in place is some audit reports that can be pulled. And effectively, these just pull data on all actions that can be carried out within the pathway. And this can be filtered by patient. So it could be used as a subject access request, and it can also be used for auditability and traceability as well. So I'll show you an example of that in just a second. But yes, because we do have that 90-day data retention policy in place, and we recommend that the Trust has some SOPs in place to make sure the full list of reports are being pulled on a regular basis. I think North Tees run them every 30 days just to ensure that all information is captured. Okay, so if I just flick back to virtual care, You can see this is the final section within settings. If I go into reports, and you can see there are two different types of reports here. So we've got a discharge report. So this pulls all of the information on patients who have been discharged within a certain time frame. So you can choose to select the last 7 days, the last 30 days, or you can choose a specific time frame that's useful to you. And then if you export, and you'll be presented with an Excel spreadsheet of all that information. I've got one open, but because I'm sharing my screen, I'm unable to show it to you. Once I've finished showing you how it works, I'll show you an example of both of those. So you can export that. And we've also got an example of the patient report. So here again, you can filter by the time range as with the discharge reports. Here you can choose to filter by a certain patient. So this will pull all the information on a specific patient. If you leave this blank and have no patients selected, it will pull a report on all patients that are currently in the virtual care system in your organisation. And here you can see a list of all the reports that can be created. As I previously mentioned, this covers all events that can be carried out within virtual care. So patients being admitted, created, discharged, information about appointments, about thresholds being changed, patients who've missed readings and deleted records as well. So you can choose to select just the reports you're interested in, or you can also choose to select all, and it will run a report on all of the information within the pathway. And again, you export, and it'll just present you with an Excel file of the data. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen briefly so I can pull up one of those reports to show you. With me. Okay, so this is our patient audit report. You can see it's been pulled on all patients, and you've got here the name of the user who's carried out the action, what their role is, the patient demographics, when the event's been carried out, and any other relevant information. So we've also got sections on forms where it will capture forms responses from patients, and also vital submissions as well. So this is our patient audit report, and we've got the discharge report as well, which is broken down into organisation and number of discharges, broken down into wards. So you can see you've got a list of wards here with the number of patients who have been discharged, and all of the other relevant information about discharges in those wards for that time period. It can also be broken down by patient, seeing the discharge methods and destinations, and broken down by users who've discharged patients as well. Okay, so those are the 5 sections that I want to show you that an organisation admin can carry out specifically. Has anyone got any questions on any of that first half of the session?
Hi, Holly. I just wanted to go back to the bit about asking the questions to the patients. Can you edit those, or can you? So there's one about pain, but can you add another question to say, sort of to ask where the pain is if they say they're having more pain?
So currently the forms questions that we've got in virtual care are sort of static. So if you're wanting to create a form that automatically follows with another question, and you can ask us for those questions to be configured in the office, and you can build a form that way. The only form response type we've got currently is a multiple choice single select question. So if you wanted to ask where the pain was, you'd have to provide the list at the minute to the patient of areas where the pain might be. We do have an item on our health call roadmap where we're going to be integrating our digital forms solution, Formfinity, into virtual care. So we've got quite a simple forms functionality in virtual care at the minute, but that is going to be expanded later in the year, and will give you increased functionality in the forms area.
Okay, great, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, from an implementation point of view, Sarah, if you've got new forms to add, or new questions to add to the forms, we need to get those to Adebisi, who'll pass them over to me, and we'll add them in the back office, and they'll just appear in that list of forms questions you can select from. So you can set up those multiple choice single select forms with the questions that you require for sure. But like I say, the additional functionality comes a bit later in the year. But we are building that out and expanding it, so it's more useful to you. We're looking for your feedback on that as well.
Lovely. Thanks, Mark.
So that's you're very welcome. We're at a little bit of a questions and a break point. Patrick's section's slightly longer than Holly's. Do we feel like we need a quick 5-minute break, or shall we run straight into the user part of the training and hand over to Patrick? Silence means we go straight to Patrick. Perfect. Well, welcome, Patrick. Over to you.
David, 2 seconds. I will just start sharing my screen. Yep. Can you see the general user now? Excellent. Right. So I'm going to take you through this list. It looks long, but don't worry, it all breaks down very shortly. What I will do is I'll take you through the monitoring page, the patients page, and the appointments page. Then I'll take you on more of a patient journey to reinforce what I've showed you, and so we can see how easy it is to push a patient through the system. So Holly's already told you about a user who is simply a user, not an admin, and this is what you see for that user. You've lost the setup. So if we go from I'll go from the very, very bottom. Go to the bottom, you've got your terms of use, your privacy notice, and your version. If you go to the top, PU is your initials. So when you log on, you'll see your initials there. Remember that anything that occurs when you are logged in will be logged against you. So just make sure you're using the right login. If I move along, just hover over, this is telling me that there are 6 patients with missed readings. There they are down there. Six people. That's configurable. When Holly showed you how to set up a profile, she put a period to tell you for a non-responder. That set that for those patients, and any patients who have either missed readings or are non-responders appear down here. Next, these next 3 ones, and these 3 will appear. These 4 will appear across all screens. There we are. These are always there, they always float on top, and they tell you who is in alert status. Red alerts, severity 3, amber, severity 2, and yellow, severity 3. So you can just access your different pages just by clicking on patients, clicking on appointments. But anyway, this is the patients page. So if we look at it, what we have is we've got the critical alert section. So critical alert section, this is 24 hours. Now, in terms of 24 hours, once they have been on there for 24 hours, if they haven't submitted a new reading, they will simply disappear from the top, but they will always remain on the bottom. This is the patient monitoring dashboard. So remember, patient monitoring dashboard is absolutely everybody's last set of readings, whereas critical alerts will only be readings in the last day. Now, again, we've got 3 at the top. And if you count here, if you're clever, you can see that's only 1 and that's only 2. That's because there's a little bit of a sneaky thing around blood pressure. Blood pressure can actually raise 2 red alerts. I go here, tells me this patient has raised 2 red alerts, 1 for systolic and 1 for diastolic. So just be a little bit careful about that. You can search for patients at the top. Just search by patient name or patient NHS number. And you can also select the ward. Now, what you see here is any patients on the wards you've been selected to. When you first log in, you will actually have everything. But if you wish to, you can drop down and you can see ward by ward. Now, one thing to be careful of here is if you move across, and you are dealing with things like appointments, your floating icons at the top are related to the ward you have. So if you are going around multiple wards, be sure that at the very end, you clear the ward and that will refresh everything. Don't worry about that. There is a little problem there where it still says sanity check, but don't worry about that. So, oops, hold on. Sorry, there we are. Clear the ward. I picked the wrong one there. And there we are. Select ward comes back again. So, critical alerts. What you have critical alerts hover over tells you what's gone on. If we look here, you have Patrick Green. We've got his date of birth and we've got his NHS number. We've got the status connected at 100%. That's the charge level and the last reading received. Now, we will offer patients the opportunity to skip readings. And if a patient has skipped a reading, it's worth just hovering over because you might see the previous reading they have submitted, but the date might not be the same as there. So if a device has gone wrong, it might be that one of these dates corresponds to a day ago, something like that. But if they have had that occur, they will appear in the missed reading section. Now, as you can see here, we've got connected and we've got disconnected. Now, don't worry too much about this. If I get on my phone, if I get an SMS alert and it tells me to log in and submit my vitals, I can log in on the phone, submit the vitals, and as soon as that phone sort of goes to sleep, the quiet mode, it'll just go down as disconnected. So don't worry too much about that. From here as well, you can always manage the patient, which will take you directly to the patient's details. Missed readings, like I've said, if a patient has failed to respond to a scheduled reading, or if a patient has skipped a vital reading. You just hover over, tells you when the last submission date was, and the date of the latest missed reading. If you look, there's a little blue icon here as well, been showing you the icon for alerts, but we also have the icon for forms. So the blue icon tells you which patients are expected to submit forms, and this will give you the contents of the last form they submitted. So there we are. We have got, do you have cold hands or feet? They said no. New or worrying pain? No. So let's just close that preview. And so you are able to monitor your patients from here. Now, we do have another section, which is simply this little drop down. And if I click into the drop down, it shows you the patient's admission summary. So this is very useful just for having a quick look at the patient's trend. How are they doing? So you can hover over and say immediately when they submitted and what they submitted. You can look at the various colours. This is obviously a priority to alert. There we are. So green is good. And then you've got your alert statuses. And if you look at this one, this looks a bit strange because there's a bit of a gap. What's happened here is that the patient has been hovering generally between 94 and 95, which would have normally on this profile created an alert. And they've figured out, right, that's good enough for him. That's more or less his baseline. So we're going to change the threshold. And as you can see here, those little dotted lines, in fact, let's go into view details and see it a bit bigger. These lines, which represent the actual thresholds, have been shifted down. So I know that's something that you might not be doing willy-nilly, but you can do that for a patient who's causing alerts. You can go in and you can adjust their threshold. Let's just jump back here. There we are. So that's the monitoring page. There we are. We've been through the overview, the critical alerts, the missed readings, the patient monitoring dashboard. Like Holly's been saying, you will have access to this and you will have all of the references to the page numbers. In terms of ward email alerts, that's something Holly was talking about. Those will be issued for any severity. So basically any alert that is raised, you will get an alert raised at that address. What it will say is if a patient has more than one alert, suppose they have a severity 3 and a severity 1, then the actual subject line of that email will say severity 3. So you can use that subject line to triage if you wish to. And you also get that for every time they miss a scheduled reading. So next, I'm going to take you to the patients page. I'll give you a bit of an overview, show you the patients displayed, the statuses, and then we'll dive in actually to a patient themselves. So patients page, just move along at the top and click on it. And remember, these things are all still there, so you can still see them. Now you can do exactly the same as before. You can search by patient name, search by an NHS number. If you look here, we've got the option of different statuses. The 3 statuses we have are active admission, a patient is on a ward. We have recently discharged, a patient was discharged less than 3 days ago. And inactive, a patient has not been on a ward within the last 3 days. So if you were to create a patient and never put them on a ward, they would drop into here as well. We do have the archive option. So show archived shows you patients that are archived. That just means if there's lots of patients who are on here and you think you possibly don't need them, you can just click this little button and archive the patient. So if I click like that, oops, not let me do a thing. That's because this patient has an active admission. You can only archive patients who don't have active admission. There we are. You can archive them and they will just disappear from this view, but you can always go like that, get them back, and if you absolutely needed to readmit them, you can readmit them just by clicking on Manage Patient. So here we are, back to here. So what you have is you've got the patient, date of birth, NHS number, device, and some of these are unassigned. That's because there's a concept on our monitoring page, which is that you will only see patients with assigned devices. So any patient, John Smith has got an active admission, but if I search for him here, he will not appear because he does not have an active device. So that's just something for you to think about. You will only, if you ever realize somebody's not on the front page, check them in here, because if they haven't got a device assigned, they won't be on that front page. And also they won't be available for appointments. So to appear on monitoring and to appear on appointments, you must be added to a ward and you must have a device assigned, which I will show you later on. In terms of the patients that you see here, you will see patients who are assigned to your ward or wards and any patient on the system who does not have an active admission. So if somebody is assigned to a different ward, they're not going to appear here. So there we are. And let's go to manage a patient then. So if we just, to manage a patient, you can actually just click on them from here. There we are. Or from here, I could have selected them from the list, or I could have just searched them. There we are, and manage patient. So manage patient. If I scroll down slightly, you will start seeing that these will appear. Your 3 patient identifiers. They are almost embedded in the system everywhere. So you always know which patient you're actually looking at. So there they are. There's your 3 patient identifiers. Now this section is the patient's details. If I click edit, I can come in and I can change things. Again, there's validation here. By validation, if you put an NHS number in that doesn't match with the actual criteria, it will reject it. Phone numbers are validated, email addresses are validated. And if you try to use an NHS number and that's already in use, that will be rejected as well. This is where, once a patient's been assigned, you might agree a PIN number with them, and this is where you can view or change the PIN. But you can also do that without even going to edit, just by hovering over. Same with a very long email address, it will just expand and show you there. Now, this phone number is quite useful because just if you've got the right software installed, if you've got your option to make telephone calls directly from your computer, you can click that and it will call the patient. So simply by clicking that, you can call them directly. Something you can also do from the appointments in the appointments page. Speaking of appointments, he has the appointments for that patient. So this patient actually has an ongoing appointment, must be from 11 o'clock to past, and I don't think he's attended. But there's his various ones. You can also create appointments from here and you can view them. So that is with Patrick Gmail, patient Patrick training, and a health checkup for 1 hour. Again, you can call directly from there. Moving down the monitoring section, this is what you saw earlier from the front page. So you can see various trends and you can click view details at any point to view all of the patient details. And just hide details and they will disappear. Now we do have log vitals here. Now log vitals are very useful if a clinician wants to log the vitals for the patient. So imagine the patient hasn't submitted, so you ring them up and over the phone they tell you what their oxygen saturation is. You can just go log vitals and you can log the vitals. You can log anyone you want. You can just pop oxygen saturation in there and leave the rest. The vitals that appear will only be the vitals that are available on the profile. So if the profile doesn't have blood pressure, you're not going to see blood pressure here and you can't log it. We do have alarms and thresholds. Remember earlier on, I talked about the oxygen saturation, which had a change to the threshold. You can change those for a patient in alarms and thresholds. If we look down, if I wanted to know what happened and more or less when, I can just hover over this and it tells me that Patrick Fay adjusted the baseline 1 day ago. And there are the various changes that I've made. I can delete those changes or I can make new ones. If I made a new one here to the heart rate, as you can see, the heart rate doesn't have a severity 2 lower limit. So I can just put 45. I can add an extra limit if I want for that patient, but I must put a reason in here. And that is then logged in all of the audit trails. That is logged in the discharge PDF that you'll see later on. It is logged everywhere. It is logged that this logged in user changed the severity for that patient. So let's go back to monitoring. And there we are. So if we scroll down slightly, we've got assigned devices. Remember, we talked about a patient appearing on the monitoring page must have an assigned device. That patient gets the device assigned there. As you can see, I can't push that button because this patient already has a device, but I could disconnect it. What happens is if you actually discharge a patient, the device is automatically disconnected anyway. So when you do end up discharging a patient, make sure you come back and you get that device if they're using one of yours. You do have various admission data as well, and you will have previous discharged admissions. Now, one thing you have to be careful of is if a patient has had a set of thresholds changed and you then readmit them later, it will automatically pull those thresholds in. So if a patient's getting readmitted, they already exist in your system before you add them. Just check to see if they've got any vitals that you might need to delete just to reset to the standard ward profile. Scrolling down, there's where active admissions, discharges, and this is your full list of forms. So from the front page, you could see the latest form, but you can click and you can see all the previous forms. So forms with your questions and with the answers. So that is the patient's page. We move to appointments. Here's the appointments page. Tell you what, I'm just going to go and show you this again. So if we go back here, appointments page, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview. I'll show you my appointments. I'll show you the ward appointments. What you would have seen earlier is these various little colours. The colours basically, grey is a missed appointment. Black is an appointment which the clinician has marked as complete, but without actually doing a video conference. They might have spoke on the phone, but the clinician has marked it as complete. That's the black one. We call that closed. We call that closed. The yellow one is basically attended via the video. The turquoise is ongoing. And finally, the blue is upcoming. So that's just a bit of an overview of the colours. If we switch back to the actual system itself. Here we are. And so that's basically, there's little screens I was showing you yesterday. And there's our future ones. If you recall, I said that we had an ongoing one. There we are. We had an ongoing appointment for Patrick Gmail. To join the app, I'll show you how to create an appointment first of all, shall I? So to create an appointment, you just go like that and create it. Now, any logged in user will have their name pre-filled in the top. And if you were to go to a patient and manage a patient and try to create an appointment from the patient, you will see that the patient is also pre-enabled in that. But if you want to, we go back, you can just say create an appointment and you're presented with a list of all the clinicians who are allowed to have these appointments. Remember what Ollie told you, you've got to have them set up as clinicians in the users. They'll appear on that list and you can select whichever one you want. Patients, you can, if you want, search and various patients will come up. There we are. And you can select whichever patient you want. And if we then, you must put a subject. You can put a bit of colour around it, around the details. You might say, I am going to ring you. I am going to have this by in person, possibly. You could do in-person ones this way, because this information can appear on the patient app. And you could give them medical advice before their appointment. If I push continue, and I can now save the changes, and whoops, it's an error. This will actually verify if the patient has a gap in their diary and if the clinician has a gap in the diary. By diary, I just mean the diary within virtual care. This won't look at you, EPR, but if the patient or clinician is already busy in virtual care, it will bring this error. So simply click that little button and you can go back and you can adjust the time of the appointment. We will default to half an hour, but you can change it to 15 minutes. So that's the minimum interval is 15 minutes. One thing to be wary of is that you can only start in the future. So if you wanted to meet now, 11:45 is the very first time you could do it. But however, what you can do is you can cheat by choosing a time later, saying save changes, and you can just immediately start that appointment. So if you click join appointment, that appointment will not only appear in the patient diary, but it will on the app, but it will actually be active for them. So they can join it straight away. There we are. I'll show you how to create, and we'll go through it a bit more when we do the patient walkthrough. So that really is all three of those. So if we just switch back, there we are. And so now I will take you on a patient journey. Now, does anybody have any questions so far? As Mark would say, in that case, I will carry on. So this is a patient journey. I'm going to create a patient, admission, assign a device so they can appear on the front page. I'm going to show you various things about the patient app and submitting readings, show you how to log clinician readings, carry out virtual consultations, and eventually discharge the patient. Now, first of all, I'm just going to sort of whiz through how to create a patient. This really is just to show you that it's not a difficult process. It is a manual process at the moment. And in the future, we hope to be able to hoover the patients in directly to a ward from the EPR. But for now, really, I'm just going to show you the manual process. So first of all, I mentioned earlier, is the patient already on the ward? So the good thing to do is to search for the patient. So search for a patient, not found. Now, obviously, the NHS number is the best one to search for there. But I'm just going to search for that, and I'm going to say, all right, not being found, so I'm going to create the patient. So here they are. Just drop your data in. So I know, although I'm cut and pasting this, I'm actually just taking it from, this could be you taking it from your EPR, etc. Anywhere convenient. Phone numbers are required. We'll drop that one in. Email addresses are required as well. If a patient doesn't have an email address, you can often just use something like that. And you can just leave them out and create patient. You've created a patient. So straight away, you've now got that patient on the system, and you can run through the rest of the system. So although it's not automatic, the creation of the patient, it is very easy. So let's do it a bit slower now, just in case you didn't follow any of that. Well, without, again, that was to show you how easy it is, but I'll just go through a little bit slower now. So same again. Patients. Search for your patient. I'll tell you what, this time I'll search for a NHS number. There we are, no patients found. So move across to create a patient. Now, if I was to click create patient straight away there, it's telling you which are the mandatory fields. So there you go, NHS numbers required, date of birth, sex, phone number, email address. So just show, if you're not sure which ones you need, just click create patient and it will warn you if you haven't got them in there. So let's just start populating it. Get rid of training. Yeah, didn't want training 2, just want training. And this is a new NHS number. It's not the one I used earlier. Patient ID is not mandatory, but you might want to put those in. Date of birth. Now, there's a bit of a trick with the date of birth, because I'm sure Mark and Holly were amazed when I was able to drop it in earlier. If you can actually just type your date of birth in, or paste. I could have pasted as well. And once you have that in, simply just go to the next field and choose the next field. Basically, if you hit tab, it can get stuck there. So just when you do date of birth, just put it in and move to the next field. Your phone number, and drop it in. If I had put in a number with a 0 on, it would have converted into the 44. So don't worry about having to convert it yourself. Email addresses. I will now put a proper email address in. There we are, and we'll just leave those blank. Yeah, leave them default, sorry. And create a patient, and here we are with our patient. Oops, didn't want to go there. That jumped in without my knowledge, right? 2 seconds. Here we are. Right, so we've now created a patient. Now we need to create an admission. So straight away, there it is. Now this is very, very important because I'm going to click create admission. And if you look there, you've got sanity, you've got the wards that I've assigned to myself. Sanity check, BP at home, and training. But if you have a ward with more than one profile, you have got to make sure that you put the patient on the correct profile. So again, that's something you've got to manage yourselves, but you must know when you put a patient on a ward, which profile you wish to use. Because if you get it wrong, it's not too bad if you get it wrong and realize immediately, you just discharge and put them on again. But if you've got them wrong after 2 days, they're on a slightly wrong profile, wrong timings. At that point, you'd have to discharge, bring them on again, and you've effectively lost the trending from the first 2 days. The information is there in the discharge PDF, etc., but you've lost them from your instant graphs that you can see from the monitoring page. So training, and there we are. We have got that. So there's our patient admitted to the ward, but remember, they're not here yet. Don't appear until I have assigned a device. So how do we assign a device? First of all, if you've got your various devices, we would expect those to be pre-installed with the software. If not, you can just click on the link and do it, or you might decide the patients are going to use their own devices. Again, it's a you in. I know in North Tees we have a combination of them both. So you're going to install the app.
I was just going to say, Patrick, yeah, the technical team are pre-installing the app onto the tablets for the clinicians to use. So they'll be ready with the app installed, and it'll just open with this QR code that you're showing. Or indeed, if a patient is using their own device, we just need the patient to download the app for free from the Google Play Store. But that'll be covered off on their internal SOPs. So yeah, no problem at all. Thank you.
Good. So there we are. You're going to install it, which you don't have to do, assign it. Remember, this is Android only. So you must remember that if it's a patient that wants to install it on their own device, the patient will appear in the monitoring, appear in appointments, and we can even assign a PIN. So let's jump up and do that. So assign device. Tell you what I'll do first, a little bit of cheating. I am going to bring this up, and this is what your app will look like. So if you were to click the Health Call app on a tablet or a phone, it would bring up this screen if it's not assigned to anybody. So you're going to click Assign Device, and it's going to be even easier for you because you're going to push the Allow Camera to Scan QR code, and you're just going to take a photograph. Whereas poor me has got to type in 8 characters. Let's hope I can do it. 6, 5, and log in. And there we are. Device is assigned. So if we look, the patient has not submitted anything yet. They are going to be asked to submit at 12 p.m. They can submit immediately using the ad hoc. I'll come to that a bit later. And they have got the various things like need help, which Holly showed you about earlier. But let's put a pin on it. So a pin basically will time out, and it means that if the patient has a tablet and it is left in there, left in the living room, it'll time out after 5 minutes and allow them to. I think we've got to define. I think you tell us how long you want the patient app to. Has that been asked, Mark? How long do you want the patient app to last before it times out?
We haven't covered that in the setup yet, no. Yeah,
so again, that can be done. But what you do is you will put a pin in. So if I would go to this and just say edit, I can just put a pin in. Now a pin is between 4 and 8 characters. You can click on it and it shows you what it is. I can push save and we've now got a pin, and I can see it from the outside. If the patient says it's my own phone, I don't want to use a pin, just go and delete and save, and the pin is not set. So there we are. That's how easy it is to update a pin. So next, what we've got our Health Call app. Really, this is just the various buttons that you have. So if I jump in, various buttons, we've got welcome at the top, tells you who has got it. You've got your future submissions at the top, previous vitals, and the buttons at the bottom. Log vitals, ad hoc, connect device. You don't really need to use that. I would show you a different way from within the log vitals. and need help, like I said, that's where your ward-specific help can appear. This is where we've got the terms of use, privacy, and the app version as well. If you want to know which app the patient's got installed on the device, we've got all of that. Now, I do have a different patient I can show you now. And here he is. And this patient's look a bit different because this patient actually has a outstanding submission. That is a scheduled submission and a future one. So obviously this is a bit of a test setup. So we have very regular intervals of submissions. In general, you might only be doing twice a day or 4 times a day, might even be weekly for weight, things like that. So it might be that this is empty a lot of the time because this will only show you any scheduled submissions that are going to appear in the next hour. So there we are. But like I said earlier, we've got the previous readings that the patient submitted. So once they've submitted, they can always take a look to see what they had. There we are, need help again. It's the same ward, so the same information. But if this was a different ward, you could have completely different information, different phone numbers to ring, different help to go to. So let's go to the next page. So I'm going to go through ad hoc scheduled readings, submitting patient readings, skips, warnings, SMSs, alerts, clinician readings, updating thresholds, submitting vitals, and the dashboard. So really this is all about what you're going to see from a patient who is submitting vitals. What we'll do is we'll go to that one that has submissions ready to go. So remember, we've got one option that is untenable at the moment, can't get in there until 12 o'clock, 12 minutes time. So what I can do is I've got the log vitals, which is always active. However, log vitals, if one of these is active in the top, log vitals will actually take you to this one. So it means that if a patient pushes the wrong button and one of these is open, you will actually do the vital submission overdue. Now, there is a bit of a difference between the two in that forms aren't available from the bottom button, but they are from the top. So let me click this, and what you're going to see is forms are available from the bottom button. That's because, like I just said, we've moved and we're going to be taking that overdue scheduled submission. So let's enter the heart rate and 75. Now I could have used external devices if I wanted to, but I can push submit, and there we've got a heart reading of 75 and confirm. External devices, you will just click on that and it will go and it will attach to any Bluetooth devices. You're going to be shown how to use Bluetooth devices a bit later on once you get access to the devices and to the Bluetooth devices. You do have the option of skipping, like I said. Skipping might be because your device is broken, might be because it's upstairs and you can't be bothered to get it. But I can skip like that, and I can skip again. But one thing you cannot do is skip these forms. Now, Holly's already talked to you about the future where we're going to bring Form 30 forms in. So it might be at that point we bring in optional forms for you. But for the moment in virtual care, if we ask you a question, we demand a response. There we are. You get a bit of a confirmation. And there we are. Submit, and wait a minute, I didn't mean to say yes. I can push the back button and I can say no. Submit and submit. There's always a little bit of a warning at the bottom telling people contact your team if you are in any difficulty. And remember, you could even put that number if you wanted to into the need help. So let's go back to the top, and it's changed color and it hasn't disappeared. That's because what we have now is a partially completed form. If we go here to the front page, there is Patrick Nuth. The last reading received is 11:50. The date for the heart rate is 11:50, but the date for temp is and SpO2 is later. There we are, 10:31. So as you can see, you can tell from here that the patient has only submitted a few of them, but it's much more obvious just by looking at them in here. There they are. They've now appeared. 75 is just shown in the grey background because they've did that one well. These are the two problematics. So there's lots of things you can do. You might call them up and ask them to submit them themselves. You might actually, so they might then go back to the app, hit log vitals, and they might put the values in. Let's go for a 92. And let's go for a 27, 37.3. And there we are. And that's disappeared. Disappears from the patient when it's complete. The alternative that could have happened is the clinician could have gone to manage patient, could have gone to log vitals, and could have popped in a, whatever I did, let's have a look, a 92. And they could have popped in a 37.3. So if they're on the phone, they might just get the patient to read them the values and they can drop them in. So there's our logs, our graphs, sorry. Remember with the graphs, you can actually click and change the time period. 1 day, up to 5 days at an all time. So if you want to just zoom in, you can do that from the graphs. So let's tell you what, let's change a threshold. If we look, this patient had oxygen saturation of 92. So it might be, I know that that's not too bad for them. So I'm going to pull it down a bit more even. So let's go to alarms and thresholds. And what I will do is I will just, from alarms and thresholds, I will click the edit. And I'm going to knock it down another, let's say, 2 steps. And there we are. You must put that in. It will not let you save unless you put your justification in there. But again, yeah, maybe something you very, very rarely do. But now if I go back to the patient, you will see that they have still got the colour. That's because the colour of the reading will always show you the colour based on the time of the reading. That's the way our thresholds work. Remember, you've got a gap. We won't get a new colour until there's a new reading being put through. So their current value is still 92. And there you are, 92 on here. If I was to put another clinician reading in, this time I will put 93. I'll put 92 again. 92, and if we go to the patient list, oops, sorry, monitoring, they've disappeared from the critical alerts. So that's 2 values identical, but one has caused the patient to drop from the critical alerts. Patrick Nuth, because at this point in time, a 92 is not considered a alert-worthy reading. Now, in terms of alerts, notifications, etc., let's have a look at our various notifications. Now, this is my inbox, and this gives you information about what's going back to the patient and back to the ward. So there we are. This one is designed to go to the patient. Now, these are completely configurable by you on a per tenant basis. So you can vary your phone numbers. You can vary things like that. Something you're going to have to go to Mark and get established before we go live. But that can all be varied. Presentation, etc. You can do that. So that one goes to the patient. This one, remember I said that the subject line will contain the vitals. So you can actually use the subject line to search for, to almost automatically triage. You might put them into different inboxes depending on the severities. So this one would come to the ward itself. What some people do is they actually add the, if you look, we don't have the date of birth in here, but that's something you can easily add. If you want to have your 3 patient identifiers in this email, you can have them put in here as well. So again, nicely configurable. Apart from the disclaimer will always be there, but you can configure the other items. If you look, various things have came through here. So there is a video conference reminder. If a patient has a video conference planned, then 15 minutes beforehand, they are told that it's 15 minutes to prepare yourself. Classic update Teams now, etc. And you got your various vitals aren't submitted. There you are. Do you remember those little blue icons? Get them every time. Every time a patient misses, it tells you that the patient's failed to submit a response. Again, slightly different format. That's because we can mess about with the formats as much as we want. So there are your various emails. So let me just go back to, yeah. So there we are. So we've got that. As we see here, we've gone over yet. No, we've got 3 minutes before we can do Friday training with his first one. So does anybody have any questions regarding that area?
Hiya, Patrick. It's just Ben with Stephen from the Respiratory Virtual Ward. I just had a couple of questions about the fact that I think you mentioned that in the email when you're creating a patient profile is like a mandatory field. For a lot of our patients, they might not have email addresses. So I just wondered how that would work in terms of creating the patient profile and obviously then getting a reminder that they've submitted their vitals.
We tend to do that in North Tees. Do you know, so it's an email address that goes nowhere. If they, but they will actually get, what you didn't see there, you didn't see notifications on the SMS. Everybody also gets notifications, SMS at the same time. In terms of SMS notifications, I'll go back to my patient. As soon as you assign a device, even if you disconnect a device and reassign it, you will get an SMS telling you you've been admitted to the ward. So at that point, you get a notification. You will also get a notification at the time of your scheduled appointment, so 12 o'clock. If I hadn't turned my phone off, you'd hear it beep at 12 o'clock to tell me it's time to submit my notifications. I will then get another one at 20 past telling me if I haven't filled it in, saying to do it, and I'll get another one at 10:02. So that's 20 minutes and 40 minutes to do that. Mark?
Yeah, just coming in on that one quickly. You might not know, Patrick, we've provided the trust with a spreadsheet that includes all of the SMS and emails sent out to patients. So at that point, you can see the overlap between the SMS and the email, and you can obviously make the decisions for yourselves as to whether you're only going to onboard patients that have a phone number and an email address, or whether you're happy to use a fake email address against that patient and only have the SMS in operation, because there is overlap for those notifications. So that's been provided. I can send you a copy out if that's helpful, just so you can see the wording in those and so that you can see the overlap between all of the communications that go out.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I was hoping Mark would talk for 10 more seconds, but he just...
Well, Faye Patrick's got a question as well, so should we let Faye go?
Oh, right.
It wasn't a question as such, Mark. It was just in response to the previous comment about not having an email address, but could maybe discuss outside of this meeting for patients that don't have an email address using say either mine or the digital health team's email, and then we've got a way of tracking which patients are just getting SMS rather than just putting a Duff email in. Just an idea.
Yeah, indeed. I think I think there's a few options, and it's probably one that you'll want to run past governance and clinical safety as part of the go live checks before that SOP gets finalised. So I think we're in that sort of part of the discussion now of actually like how do we use it and actually what do we need in place to support, and does that affect which patients are eligible? But I think you're absolutely right. As long as it's not the same as the ward email address, so we're not getting confused between alerts that are being raised. So when somebody raises a little red severity 3 on the dashboard, they'll also get an email to the ward, and we just don't want to confuse that inbox. I think anything else is a viable solution, and it's up to the trust to define that process. We're showing you how the functionality operates, and I'll support you through those conversations, but ultimately it's your decision at that point. But yeah, it's a good idea.
Fab.
Patrick, did that buy you enough time to move to the next part of your demo?
Yes, actually, I was worried that you would actually talk so long it would go red, because this will actually go red after 5 minutes. So this is what it looks like in the 5-minute window between 12 o'clock and 12:05. So now if you log your vitals, you can log your vitals. So let's just put a heart rate in. Confirm. And if oxygen saturation, if I go to 98, I'm going to, there we are. If you look, there's no advice. 98's a good one. 98's green. If I go to 94, 94 is, I don't know if that's amber or on my screen, if that's amber or yellow, but let's go back. Let's go to 95. That's definitely there. Yeah, that's yellow now. And if I go back, we can go to 89. There's your red. So basically what the patient sees is different colours to tell them the severity of what they have received. But they will then receive that email or the SMS. The email can be a bit more detailed, whereas an SMS will just tell you you have, as you see, what you've seen the content of the SMSs, it'll tell you you've breached a vital. So confirm, you've got that one, and let's just do an easy one. And there we are. This is the first one, so no option to skip here. And we're good. There we are. I can rest easily for another 27 minutes. And you've got the information. If I was unsure of something, there we are, need help, and the information is there. So that really is the ongoing monitoring. But remember, you'd see your information on the front page. You can look at your various people that are raising alerts. So straight away, you can see this patient. So you can go to manage patient. You can call them immediately if you've got that linked, find out what they are. And it might be they made a mistake, and you can just log vitals and put the value in, which is less drastic. There we are, the patient's now gone into the green zone because they've just made a slight mistake. So that is the patient's page, and that is that. So submitted readings. Let's now go to virtual appointments. I've showed you a little bit about them before. Now, this won't be a perfect demonstration because we're not going to have the two-way information, because you need the actual app for that. You need the device. But I'll show you how to create an appointment, update, carry out, and the various statuses, which, to be honest, you've seen earlier as well anyway. So let's go back to here. And if we look in consult, it's empty. So remember, I've told you before, you can actually create an appointment from appointments directly on the patient. But you could have gone to appointments and selected the patient. So let's give it one of the mandatory fields. You fill the bottom in if, like I said, you don't have to. Let's say 1230 to 1300 hours. And if you remember, that's probably going to cause a clash. Save changes. And there we are. We've created the clash. So I'm just going to go back and I'm going to pick a random time in the future that I hope nobody's on. And save changes. And we are there. So if I now go to my appointment calendar, there we are. Now, one thing, if you are actually managing a ward, is that you do have the option of going to ward appointments, and you can see which appointments belong to which wards. And you can even go down to the users themselves. So you do have that various granularity as somebody who is managing the ward. I'll just go to my appointments, and here they are. Now, various things you can do. Remember, I showed you that if you do nothing, they will end up as grey. However, what you can do is you can click into an appointment, and if I wish to join it, I can join the appointment. That is the classic video call. Now, suppose I know that they're not going to do it. They've gone in advance and said their device isn't working properly. Then I could, if I've got the software, I could ring them, or I could just ring them on my own mobile. And I could say, right, that's me done. I've rung them. They said they're okay. I'm going to mark this as complete. Now I can just put my little outcome in here. And putting that in will now write that into the record. Now, one thing to do is remember this is an internal one. So even in the future, when it gets passed back to an APR, you really want to be managing the patient more fully in the APR itself. So if you have complex notes to write them up in the APR, and just put something short and snappy in here. There we are. And that's now gone into black to show you it was completed by the clinician, but without having a video call. Now let's go back and look at the consult. And as we can see, we have a consult ready coming up at 11 p.m. But what if we wanted this straight away? I could maybe ring him and say, would you be happy to do it right away? And if he said yes, I can just go here and I can join the appointment. Now, what can happen is you can adjust the cameras, you can turn things on and off. And once you're ready, just push connect. And what will happen is in the lower right area, the user will appear, and in the middle, it'll wait for our friend here to join. So if I just go like that, what happens is this will become enabled and they can join it as well. But again, because this is the browser, that won't come enabled now. So what I can do is what I can do is I can simply end it. So imagine this call is there. You can just end by using this button at the bottom. However, what you can do during the call, if you needed to, is we have a patient vitals button. Patient vitals, click on that. And what it effectively does is it opens a new window with the patient's vitals. So it's very straightforward to view the vitals whilst you're in the middle of a call. Oops. Let me just go back there, and if we ever want to finish it, you just hit the red button, and very similar to the other one, you've got the option to put some outcomes. We'll here and confirm, but again, keep them short and sweet, and that goes down as 01. So there's our various colours for the various appointments. So that's how easy it is for appointments to do. Very straightforward. Probably the last thing you're going to do, you're going to monitor the patient, you're going to update things as you go along, but eventually you might get to the point where you're going to discharge them. So to discharge them, you just find the patient record. They would be available on the front page, I imagine, at this point, or you could just go to patients and find them. So Friday training, manage the patient. Scroll down and you've got your admissions section effectively. So it's very simple. All you do is just hit the discharge button. We do have the option to, well, not an option, a requirement to add the discharge method. These are the defined ones by the NHS. And you can choose whichever one you want. And you do have a additional narrative you can put in as well. Again, that information is more suitable to be put in the APR, so don't go too much to town. And discharge, and the patient is now discharged. At this point, you can view the patient, download the PDF, click on that. you won't get the option to go into Welsh. You will just go straight and download it. And that will appear. And you can open it, and here it is. Obviously, this is just the one we had today, so there's not much information in. But you have all of things like your threshold changes are recorded. So everything is in there. Your form responses, all the information that is relevant to the patient stored here, and that can then be sent off, saved to the APR. That's possibly another thing that might be part of your standard procedures, so that when a patient, or within a month of the patient being discharged, you save that off and store it somewhere. So that really is the discharge process. So discharging, we've gone through the methods, destination, the narrative. Oh, let's archive. Nearly missed that bit. Remember, the archiving is an optional thing. So to archive a patient, you would basically, it's Patrick Friday we're looking for. So I'm going to go to my patient list. Again, this might be something you do after 2 months, after a month after they've been discharged. You might just search for whoever you want to search. You might actually, an easy way to do it is go to recently discharged. Remember, you have 3 days, do this within 3 days. There they are. Yeah, we have Friday training. Does not have a device because that device was unassigned after he was discharged. And I now have the option of managing the patient, add him to a new ward, click on there, and I can archive him. Just really means that he doesn't appear on the front page. I'll get that recently discharged, not many people there. Let's clear that status. And so he doesn't appear here, doesn't appear on the front page. All nice and easy, but you can get him back. You can readmit. But remember, if you were to readmit, if we were to look at his alarms and thresholds, you can get those alarms. Yeah, I remember I didn't change it for this person. So they weren't changed, but they would be changed if you had changed them. So that is that. So does anybody have any questions? Oops, could be you, Mark.
Okay, perfect.
Do you want to take control,
well,
or shall I leave my screen on?
Yeah, just leave your screen on. If you could go forward to the next slide. I've got just a couple of minutes just to outline some bits and pieces, but we're very near the end. We've got a few more minutes for questions at the end there. So I'll be brief. Obviously, we do have a service desk wraparound to support the implementation. So once I've finished my piece of work with the team to implement, there will be ongoing service support. We're certainly not disappearing anywhere. Lee Mulvaney, our lead's already been introduced to the team and is working on the connection between your service desk and our service desk. This little diagram here is just to sort of helpfully point out what we sort of roughly expect the service model to be. Loosely, we would expect, or the expectation, I believe, from the wider implementation is that patients would go directly to their clinical teams, and obviously the ward help that you can populate on the platform would sort of mirror that. So the patient can click that button in their app and have the information from you, or you may be providing them with onboarding packs, or they'll have another method of communicating with your clinical teams as their first line of support, whether that's a health issue or a technical issue or something else. Obviously, if it is a technical issue and not one that your clinical teams are able to deal with, we'd be expecting that to come up to the NUTH help desk, and we'll be providing them with a list of sort of regular scenarios and issues that are easy to resolve, or sort of the frequently asked questions, and hopefully we can get that quickly resolved internally. Anything that appears to be like a platform level issue or a more complicated item that needs to be addressed would then be escalated through to the health call service desk. Can't outline that process completely clearly because we're still defining whether that's going to be through the portal or via email, but ultimately as clinical teams your process is in place from patient to clinician to the internal service desk. I believe that's established and been written up into the SOPs and procedures now. But obviously we can link in with the clinical working group and the technical working group just to make sure that bit's covered off. Oh, Patrick, could you just do the next slide? I forgot that I wasn't presenting then. I was clicking frantically.
Right, so 2 seconds, there we
No
are.
problem at all. So the incident scenario SLAs, again, this is more a service desk level item to manage in an ongoing way, but just good for you to know. The above diagram will be in operation, but the next slide, which is a lot of information, but I'll try and summarize verbally, if you don't mind clicking on, Patrick. Obviously, something may go wrong with the platform. We may have downtime. It hasn't happened yet, but if it does, and we become aware of it, we'll be looking to fix that within 4 hours. And obviously we've got relevant email addresses and contacts in place to notify you if we notice it. And obviously we're putting the procedures in place to make sure you can notify us of anything like that. So any significant failure has an almost immediate turnaround in terms of being able to fix. And we would expect that the SOPs that you're putting in place have some sort of business as usual protocol in case either an individual patient or all patients are somehow affected by some kind of outage. We need to know that they're taken care of, obviously. The next SLAs are for sort of significant adverse impacts on a number of patients, and we'd still look to turn those around within 8 hours. And any sort of moderate impacts to a moderate number of patients has a slightly longer lead time on it of 20. And then we start to get into sort of minor adverse impacts and inconveniences, and then just sort of cosmetic stuff has a much longer lead time on it, as you'd sort of expect. But that's just to clarify that we sort of have those agreed levels of response time, and they are contracted and we're accountable for them. Obviously, we'll be looking to use those as maximum times, not minimum, and hope to have everything resolved much more quickly if anything did go wrong. But the purpose of this slide is just for the reassurance that that is in place to support your clinical processes and so that you can take it forward with your teams. I think there aren't any slides left. The next one's probably a questions one, Patrick. There we go. So you can probably stop sharing, and if people want to ask any questions about any part of the training today or anything else you'd like us to cover, please do. We'll follow up the session with sharing the user guide mentioned and the slides that we've presented today, and we'll make available the recording as well, so that you're able to access that if it's useful. So yeah, I think that's everything from our side. Any feedback or questions from the NUS team? Please come in, Faye.
No questions. It was just to say thank you very much. It was a great presentation, and thank you for your time.
Brilliant, thanks. Well, it's great, team. Happy to be here. I'll send you the information over after the session, Faye. But otherwise, if that's everything, we'll leave you all to a few extra minutes back for your lunch, and look forward to working with you on the rest of the project.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.